So just like Code Veronica, Resident Evil Zero Remake is kind of almost confirmed at this point. It's like pretty much 90% confirmed, with Capcom having a project labeled Chambers, which is like, I mean, come on. And I think that there's some interesting new leaks that could show some really promising gameplay additions to the original format. Oh shit. That was a nice try. So my last video on Resident Evil, which I assumed was a saturated category, did like absolutely fucking fantastically compared to all the other content on my channel, so I figured I would milk that cow as much as possible and make this one. So if you aren't aware and you're not on Twitter and Twitter brained like I am and like existing online and in the Resident Evil space, you may possibly know that Capcom has a project in the making right now called, the codename is Project Chamber, or Project Chambers, I think, which, as we all know, is the last name of Rebecca Chambers, the main protagonist from Resident Evil Zero. And with the remakes that Capcom has been on, it seems as though that this is going to be another remake of Resident Evil Zero, which I'm very excited about. Resident Evil Zero is like a top 5 Resident Evil game for me. It's very good. I love it a lot, and I would love to play a remake of it, honestly. It is fucking sick. The Chambers project name does seem a little on the nose and could seem like it's a little bit of a red herring, but I don't think it is. I think that a lot of the pieces of the puzzle of Project Chambers do kind of add up to a Resident Evil Zero remake, so I think we can almost assume that this is coming in the future after the Code Veronica remake. There are some assets that could lead to things that happen in Resident Evil Zero, like the grapple from the Separate Ways DLC in Resident Evil 4 is easily leading itself to, that's very hookshot-like. I could see them doing some more work on the hookshot mechanic in the remake. Then you also have the worm battle from Separate Ways, which we talked about last time, which would be really good to do the sandworm from Code Veronica. And with the sandworm in Code Veronica, you also have more assets to do the centipede from Resident Evil Zero. And the centipede from Resident Evil Zero is also leading, you know, more mechanical influence for some boss like Yawn in Resident Evil 1. So, you know, there's always ways that these assets kind of mix together, and I feel like there's a lot of evidence to support that Resident Evil Zero has quite a lot of assets in the making. And then even on top of that, there's enemies like the fuck-ass Bandersnatches, which we know are coming in Resident Evil Code Veronica, which kind of act like those leech people that have the stretchy ass arms. Like, I think there's a lot of assets that kind of fuse together and mix in that can make all of these kind of work. There's also some more information on a voice actor, which comes from the Guardians of the Galaxy game. The voice actor for Star-Lord has a credit as a lead role in Capcom's Project Chambers, which does make it seem like he could be easily the person who is voicing Billy Cohen, which I think is very interesting. Although, I mean, I know it is an actor, like they are meant to play different roles and, you know, act, but it's kind of weird to think of the guy who did Star-Lord in the Guardians of the Galaxy video game doing Billy, because Billy you know, he's like a war hero. He sounds like he smokes like 10 packs a day and chews on gravel for fun. And Star-Lord kind of sounds like a dude bro. So like, I don't fully know what they're trying to go for there, but like maybe he's a good actor and he can kind of do a different voice and give something to Billy that you know, it makes sense. Hopefully they pick the right guy, you know what I mean? And then another leak, which I'm sure a lot of people will be excited by. I'm a little iffy on it because I have a lot of wonders into how it could be done and how everything could work, but in the data files, which data miners have found, there seems to be an invite friend for co-op feature related to the Chambers product. And I don't know if this is base testing because they're far enough into the game development line that they want to test an idea like this. I don't know if this is for an extra game mode. I don't know if this is for some kind of DLC or mercenaries or raid mode. I don't know, but like, it could also just be a multiplayer storyline where one person plays Rebecca and one person plays Billy. A lot of people do want more co-op Resident Evil games, and I think that especially with how they like to inspire mechanics and you know, test out mechanics in earlier games so they can use them in later games, this is probably something that they're going to test out for Resident Evil 5. I am just a little wary, I guess, on how the co-op mechanic can work, because the difference between Resident Evil 5 and Resident Evil 0 are that Resident Evil 5 has two protagonists that stay together for the entirety of the game, I believe. If they do get separated at some point, let me know. I haven't played through the game fully yet in the co-op feature, so like, which I'm going to do on my Twitch, you should check it out. But I'm not 100% certain if they stay together, but I am 100% certain that in Resident Evil 0, Billy and Rebecca are separated a total of, I think it was 5 to 6 times, if I'm not wrong. And I am just wondering how they would do that mechanic, because the co-op between Rebecca and Billy doing like a certain puzzle, like the maze puzzle where I use Rebecca to open doors and Billy to fight hunters and stuff, that is quite easy to do in co-op. You just choose someone to go through the maze. The thing that's not easy to do in co-op is when the characters completely separate and is never seen on screen. There is ways they could get around this, I guess, by either just rewriting the game and having it so they never split up, which I don't know how I feel about, because I don't really want them to change the flow of the game too much. I do think Resident Evil 0 is quite perfect, but if they could do it in a way that is good, obviously I wouldn't freak out about it. Or the other way is to have it so like when you split up, you both have an objective to meet so that you can come back together. And that's another thing that I'm kind of weary about as well, because like, imagine, you know, you get two people of varying like skill degrees in the Resident Evil games. Like you get somebody who's been playing them for years and is like a speedrunner, is super fast. And you get them who like just gets their friend in Resident Evil so that they can play co-op. And then you've got the Resident Evil expert who does their entire objective in like 5 minutes. And then they're just waiting 45 minutes for their friend to complete their objective so that they can get back together. Like, that would be kind of atrocious. But if they make it work, if they do rewrites, if they figure out a way to make this work, I think it could work pretty well. I have faith. And if you're worried about the game being focused on co-op and ending up like Resident Evil 5, where people tell you the game sucks if you don't play it in co-op, apparently that is not the goal here. There is a single player mode that is probably the main focus, I would assume. So I'm sure that the single player mode will be just as good, if not better, than the co-op mode. I have faith. I hope. Anyway, I don't know. I'm not take this all with a grain of salt. I am not even as closely linked to this as the leakers are. I'm just covering. What I will say is something that I feel they could do with the Resident Evil 0 remake is attach Billy's story to Resident Evil 5. As we know, Billy is framed for killing a whole village of innocent people in Africa during his military service, and I believe that there is actually potential for a great retcon here. I know a lot of people don't like retcons, but I actually have a good idea, I feel like. I think we could take Billy Cohen's story and link it to the progenitor flowers from Resident Evil 5, having it so that he runs into a kind of free sect of the zombies from Resident Evil 5 and is forced to kill them all to, you know, defend himself from the zombies. And the rest of his team sees this and assumes he is just gunning down innocent people. And that is what leads him to be put onto death row and, you know, tried for his crimes. I think that is very interesting because I could also see Billy being the type of person who is remorseful and believes that he did genuinely kill a bunch of random villagers. And it also connects the story very well to Resident Evil 5 and gives Billy more of a anchored point in the story, especially now that we know that Resident Evil 5 comes out. I know that when Resident Evil 0 came out, they had no idea they were going to make Resident Evil 5, so that's why they're not connected at all. But I think now that we know where the story is going, putting Billy in Africa, setting Resident Evil 5 in Africa, there should be kind of some connection there. I think we could make that happen. I think that could be a really interesting plot device. But it's just a thought, you know? But that is everything that I have to say about my thoughts of Resident Evil 0. Like I said, Resident Evil 0 is a top 5 Resident Evil for me. I really would love to see this remade. I would love to see the train and the lab and all of the locations in the RE engine. I am super excited at the idea of this, especially having Rebecca in the RE engine as an actual person and not just a fuck-ass RPD Gooner bait Wesker photo. But yeah, adding this game into the RE engine and making a new canon timeline with it, hopefully connecting it to Resident Evil 5, could just be so sick. I'm so hopeful. But that's gonna do it for me today, guys. I hope that you guys are having a good day. I hope you have a good rest of your week. Hoping I get this out by Wednesday. If I don't, I'm sorry, but I appreciate you guys for watching this video. I know that there is at least 12 other videos on YouTube that you could have watched, so I really appreciate you for choosing to watch mine. I hope to see you in the next one. If you guys are at all interested in Resident Evil content, subscribe, because apparently I'm just slowly merging myself into a Resident Evil content creator. If you want to watch my Resident Evil marathon series, I am currently playing through Resident Evil 4 Remake on Twitch. Go follow me. But that's going to do it for me. I'm going to head out of here. Goodbye!